Hi everyone, and welcome to mini lecture 4. Today we'll be talking about subject-verb agreement. Before we get started, take a moment to gather the following materials for the lecture assignment. You'll need a Word document to write on and access to your current writing project materials. The purpose and goals for today's lecture are as follows. First, we'll define the term subject. Next, we'll define the term verb, and then we'll understand the concept of agreement between the two. So first, what we want to do is understand what a subject is. Now, that is a noun that performs the action of the sentence. It can manifest as a number of items. So oftentimes, nouns are explained as a person, place, or thing. And it's actually a very solid way of understanding what a noun is. Sometimes writers will believe that nouns they exclusively have to be human for one reason or another, but that is certainly not the case. Nouns can even be inanimate objects. So, for example, looking at that person, place, thing setup that we just discussed, for example, yes, it can be a person. The child ran from one end of the field to the other. It can be a place. The Orpheum Theater offers several professional performances throughout the year, or it can be a thing. After falling from the shelf, both the sword and shield broke off of the Wonder Woman pop vinyl. So we can see that that nouns can be a person, place, or thing, but in each of these examples, these nouns served as the actor of the sentence. They are the ones who are performing the action. The child is the one who ran from one end of the field to the other. The Orpheum Theater is the one that offers several professional performances throughout the year. And the sword and the shield are what broke off of the Wonder Woman pop vinyl once it fell from the shelf. And so in these instances, and you can see that from our examples, we've got nouns elsewhere, but the subject of the sentence is the noun that is performing the action. It is the actor of the sentence. And it can be a person, it can be an animal, it can be a computer, it can be a book, a bag, whatever the case may be. It's just whatever happens to be performing the action of the sentence. With subjects, they can either be either plural or singular. And we see these examples here. So the dog enjoys morning runs, or the dogs enjoy morning runs. And so in the first two examples, the child and the Orpheum Theater, those are both our subjects. They're both singular, so there's only one of them. But the final example, both the sword and shield, those are our subjects, because both of those are performing the action of breaking off of the pop vinyl. Now, a verb, on the other hand, is the action of the sentence. So it communicates a specific motion or action performed by the subject. So it's basically what the subject is doing. Now, with verbs, it can manifest as both active and passive verbs. And if you haven't checked out the active passive verbs mini lecture yet, I would definitely encourage you to do so because I do go into more detail on what that means and the rhetorical affordances of both. So a verb is basically, again, what's being done. So if we look at these examples here, the child ran. So the child, is running, or ran from one end of the field to the other. That is what the child is doing. What the Orpheum Theater is doing is it is offering, or the Orpheum Theater offers, that is the action that the theater is performing, or the sword and the shield broke off, or broke, so that is what the sword and the shield are doing in this instance. That is the action that they are performing. The child ran, the Orpheum Theater offers, the sword and the shield broke. And so we have that clear actor and action. So who's doing what and what are they doing? All right, so now let's talk about what does agreement mean and why do we need a subject and a verb to agree? So when we express agreement, that basically just says that we recognize if a subject is plural or singular and we adjust our verb accordingly. So how you write the verb is going to be dependent upon who or what your subject or subjects are. So if a subject is singular, its verb must be singular. So the author indicates that ACT scores are not a reliable form of determining college preparedness. So the author, one author, indicates. So because we have, because our subject is singular, we're going to add an S to the end of our verb in this example. So indicates. It would sound kind of weird if I said the author indicate that ACT scores. It just does, again, it just sounds weird. On the flip side, if a subject is plural, its verb must also be plural. The authors, so plural, more than one authors, indicate that ACT scores, blah, 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 blah. So if we have a singular subject, then we want to add an S to the end of our verb. But if we have a plural subject, which ends in an S, we do not want to include an S at the end of our verb. So we can see the author indicates versus the authors indicate. So when we think of subject-verb agreement, this mostly concerns our writing when sentences are written in the present tense, like we've seen through our examples. So the actor performs several times a week. The actors perform several times a week. So again, we can see those differences when we change the subject from singular to plural. It can also be applied when using helping verbs. So verbs like has or have or had even. The student has emailed the professor. The students have emailed the professor. So again, going back to sort of flipping the script here, if I were to say the student have emailed the professor, that wouldn't sound correct. And if I were to say the students has emailed the professor, again, that just sounds kind of weird. So we want to make sure that those helping verbs agree with the subject or subjects of the sentence. One thing that's important to remember is that agreement often, and I would say very rarely, applies, if it does at all, when we are writing in the past tense. So the mechanic fixed the brake light. The mechanics fixed the brake light. I think this is the case because when we are dealing with past tense, in order to indicate that the sentence occurred sometime in the past, we have to have that fixed suffix, that fixed ending of ed, at least in this case. And so because of that, we can't really add an S or take away an S in these cases. I can't say fixed it or fixed. So that, again, that just sounds odd. It really disrupts the reading and the rhythm that your reader will have established by getting into your work. And so if you are writing in past tense and are not using a helping verb like we see in the previous example, then you don't really have to worry about it. The mechanic fixed, the mechanics fixed. And so you can just keep the past tense ending as is. All right, now let's talk about the lecture assignment. What I'd like you to do is review the draft materials of our current project and locate 2 areas in which you can revise for subject-verb agreement. I would recommend looking for places in which you have more than one subject. That's typically where writers, myself included, tend to fall into hot water with subject-verb agreement, is that typically in academic writing, you're more often than not dealing with a singular subject. And so sometimes if you slip in a plural subject, so 2 or more actors, it can be easy to miss when revising or even writing your verb that goes along with it. But what I'd like you to do is, for each instance, include the original sentence as well as the revised. I'd also like you to compose a brief write-up, so about 50 words, discussing how the revision makes your text easier to read. All right, everyone, that does it for today. If you have any questions or if I can speak to any of these concepts further, please don't hesitate to contact me. All right, everyone, until next time.